What's up, everybody? Happy Wildcard Day 2, or I guess Super Wildcard Day 2. Welcome to the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. I thought day one of the wildcard matchups was fairly entertaining overall. We got a fairly entertaining Bills game, which I thought Josh Allen was fantastic in, and really the difference in that ball game. Could have been the last game of Phillip Rivers' career. We'll see how that goes and how that plays out moving forward. But I thought that was entertaining. Then we got a Rams upset, which certainly had some intrigue. Wolford goes out, and then Jared Goff is ready to play. I had mentioned yesterday I thought that if Jared Goff played in this game, that they had the ability to upset the Seahawks, and this is not how I expected it to go down. As soon as Wolford was the starter, I expected the Seahawks to take care of business in that game. It's a weird scenario. I think based on how that game went, that the Rams win that game no matter what. Their defense just shut down the Seahawks offense pretty much all game long. But it's interesting. I'm sure if you're a fan, or specifically a fan in that scenario, like the worst thing you could do is injure John Wolford on that play, and then see Jared Goff come off the bench. You probably just want Wolford to stay in there. But it was interesting in the fact that it almost seemed like the Rams were preferring Wolford, at least according to Troy Aikman. It was an interesting kind of storyline to keep an eye on. Goff certainly didn't play great, but overall the Rams were definitely the better team on the day. And then Tampa Bay, I don't know that I want to say that they eked out a win against Washington. They basically, I think they did, hold the lead from, start to finish, or basically from their first score onwards. But got a little bit of a scare at the end of the game, and certainly the Washington footballers, keeping it a little bit close. But, Taylor Heineke, one of the real big stories of the day. And this is why I love football for a variety of reasons, but this is just another reason I love football so damn much. Aaron Rodgers is going to be the MVP of the league. He plays Tampa in season and can't do anything. He throws basically 2 pick sixes in the game, had 100 some yards, no touchdowns, and they couldn't do anything. Taylor Heineke was literally not on an NFL team a month ago. And he comes in and throws for 300 yards, a touchdown, runs for another touchdown, and basically keeps the Washington football team alive in this game against Tampa Bay. I mean, who can possibly predict this stuff? It's absolutely crazy. And that was one of the real fun stories of the day. It was how Taylor Heineke played, and certainly you would think earned himself some money. I'm not talking starter role here, but certainly a top end backup possibility moving forward, just based on his overall play. I mean, listen, if you put up 302 touchdowns against Tampa Bay in a playoff game, that's going to get you noticed a little bit. And it wasn't just, his legs. He was beating teams with his, beating Tampa with his arm. I mean, the throw to the back corner of the end zone on his lone touchdown pass of the day, you can say he bobbled it or not. That's a hell of a throw. I mean, that was an absolute dime. I mean, there were probably 3 or 4 more passes that Washington dropped through the course of the day. I mean, he had a hell of a game. So that was certainly entertaining as well. So, I don't know that it was like the greatest stretch of football, but I thought overall for first round, wild card 3 games, I thought that was fairly entertaining. And I think we're going to get 3 more entertaining games on Sunday, or today as you're listening to this. So I think it's going to be just a really great weekend of football overall. We obviously know better now who the Packers are going to play moving forward. New Orleans, Chicago will ultimately dictate that game tomorrow. And then it's either going to be Packers, Rams, if the Saints do in fact win that game. And then if the Bears win, it'll be Packers, Bears. So we're down to 2 teams that Green Bay can play. Again, either the Rams or the Bears. And let's just start by discussing, the Saints and the Bears tomorrow. I think the Saints win this. I think they win it 8-9 points, somewhere in there. Maybe Chicago keeps it a little bit closer. I think Chicago's offense is going to struggle with that Saints defense. I think the Bears used some smoke and mirrors about the 3-4 games before the Packer game, to get Trubisky going a little bit. And really it was some really poor defenses that Chicago played before that. I think New Orleans is going to really keep David Montgomery under wraps. And I think they're going to have a very similar game plan as to what Green Bay did against Chicago and holding them to 16 points. And with no Darnell Mooney, Anthony Miller, this is going to be a huge game for him. Jimmy Graham needs a big game against his former team. Allen Robinson needs a big game. I mean, I just don't see them being able to stick with the Saints in New Orleans in the Superdome. Drew Brees, Michael Thomas back. I mean, that entire offense and what they can throw at Chicago. No Roquan Smith in this game either. I mean, Chicago is beyond behind the eight ball in this game going in. It's not to say they can't win. When you've got Khalil Mack and a good defense and you can put pressure, and maybe Drew Brees, if he doesn't have one of his sharper games or can't push the ball downfield, then yeah. And then I think the Bears could have a puncher's chance in this game, but it certainly seems and feels like this is setting up for Tampa Bay versus New Orleans and Breeze and Brady in the next round, and then Green Bay to face LA, and we get some fun matchups, right? I mean, the biggest one would be Devontae Adams versus Jalen Ramsey in this phenomenal matchup. And I think I think probably the consensus in this is that the Packers end up getting a little bit of a better draw, not having to face Tampa Bay, which was the likely scenario going into this weekend, and instead get a Rams team that has a beat up quarterback and really potentially a beat up Aaron Donald. Cooper Kupp went out with an injury, although it sounds like he's going to be okay. And this isn't me wishing upon injuries. I hope all of them can play. I wish David Bakhtiari could play. I wish there were no injuries at all throughout the season. That would be freaking amazing, but that's not how it works. That's not how it is. And you could have the Rams coming in with a banged up Aaron Donald if he can play. I'm assuming if there's any way, shape, or form he can play, he will. Cooper Kupp banged up and Jared Goff banged up. And I think, yes, that's a good scenario for the Packers, but man, that Rams defense, they're scoring points each week. I mean, they're getting pick sixes and literally scoring touchdowns. I think 3 or 4 times in the last month or so. I mean, they've been on an absolute roll. And if Aaron Donald is healthy in that game and himself, I mean, Aaron Donald inside and then Ramsey on the back end. Those are two just dynamic players that you have to account for at all times. And Aaron Donald can wreck a game on his own. And I saw a couple of tweets of how there will be some fun matchups between Corey Linsley and Elton Jenkins against Aaron Donald. Sure, but I guarantee you're going to see some Aaron Donald versus Lucas Patrick through a big chunk of that game, and that the Rams will do everything in their power to get that matchup. And I think you'll even see him on the outside some against Rick Wagner and Billy Turner. And I think they're just going to use Aaron Donald in a variety of different ways to try to wreak havoc against the Packers offensive line, if in fact that is the matchup. So I do think that there is, some potential issues with that Rams defense against the Packers offense. That being said, I think the Packers defense can really control, Jared Goff and that Rams offense, especially if Cooper Kupp is beat up. You're going to have to control Cam Akers, and that's certainly going to have to be a focal point. You're going to have to take care of the tight ends with Higbee and Gerald Everett. But I think overall, the way that Rams offense is playing right now is not super great. And I think, especially cold weather, Lambeau Field, if you got a dude with a poor thumb or a bum thumb, I really like the potential for Green Bay in that game. But I think that could be, a really interesting matchup. I don't think that it's necessarily this perfect matchup, especially with what the Rams can do on defense. On the flip side, if it ends up being Chicago, we just saw that game, just a week ago with, Chicago thinking in that game that their playoff lives were on the line. So, they gave Green Bay their best shot, basically a week ago. Green Bay's seen that. Again, Darnell Mooney, Roquan Smith, both banged up. We'd see if they'd be ready to go next week. But, it certainly wouldn't be the worst case scenario in the world. I know that the overarching theme would be, well, it's really tough to beat teams 3 times. Well, yeah, it would be tough to beat the Rams or the Bucks or whomever else too. Like, these are going to be tough games. So either way, Green Bay avoids Tampa Bay for now, and Tampa Bay will likely be going to New Orleans, although Tampa Bay could host LA as well. We'll see what happens. I think it's going to be really interesting. And again, one of the benefits is that Green Bay, can go into tomorrow and really spend from the time that the Rams won on Saturday. They basically can start preparing for the Rams. Matt LaFleur made mention that they have all the info on the Bears that they basically need from just playing them a week ago. They don't need to prepare in advance against the Bears. Obviously, if the Bears end up winning, then they have a full week to go. They can spend the rest of, whatever the rest of today was or Saturday was, plus all day Sunday up until the end of that Bears game, preparing for the Rams as if they're the opponent. So it kind of simplifies things for Green Bay. And then if somehow Chicago does win, you just kind of switch gears a little bit and forget all the notes you just made. And really in an interesting way, I think Goff, Trubisky at quarterback, Cam Akers, the way he's running, David Montgomery at running back, it's not that super, different between the two teams either. So I think that does give Green Bay some advantage. It'll be interesting to see. We don't know yet, at least as I'm recording this, as to whether or not Green Bay will play Saturday or Sunday. If you've got a beat up Rams team, you're probably hoping that game is Saturday. Either way, if you're Green Bay, you're probably hoping that game is Saturday. You've had an extra week of rest. The opposing team, if it's Chicago, they'll come off a Sunday game with, short rest. If it's the Rams, still you're a week less and trying to get Kupp and Goff and Aaron Donald ready for that game. You probably want it on less rest, right? If I'm just being honest. So again, hoping that everyone's healthy. I really do. I think that would be the best possible matchup, but we'll see what days the games end up being on and who ends up playing the Packers tomorrow. Should be, or Sunday today as you're watching this, should be a really fun game. One question that I've been asked recently is about Nathaniel Hackett as the potential head coach of the of the Atlanta Falcons. Sorry, I know that was a really rough transition. Transitions are not my specialty. I apologize, but we'll transition there anyway. I think Hackett would make a really good fit in Atlanta. One thing I've noticed is that they seem to have a little bit more, kind of buttoned up coaches. Nathaniel Hackett has that ability. It's a rare ability to kind of be the fun and jovial guy, but also come down hard when you need to. I think that's a really, special thing for a coach to be able to do, kind of play good cop, bad cop when you need to in the right moments. I think he's been integral in this Packers offense. He's called plays in the past for Jacksonville, brought a Blake Bortles-led team to an AFC championship and a bad call away from a Super Bowl. Has really helped the Packers and Aaron Rodgers in this offense get off the ground. There've been a ton of credit that they've given Nathaniel Hackett for the red zone offense, which has been dynamic. So yeah, he's absolutely a valid candidate for Atlanta, and I think they're really smart to take a look at him. It'll be interesting to see how he interviews. I mean, that's going to be a huge portion of that. Personally, I don't see it. I don't see them going with a Nathaniel Hackett, just Arthur blank, and knowing how that franchise goes. I don't think they'll pull the trigger on that. But at the same token, I think Hackett has everything that you'd want in a head coach. It would obviously be very dependent on who he thinks you could bring in as a defensive coordinator and on his staff. And again, really selling the Falcons on his vision. But he's absolutely a very strong candidate, in my opinion. And then, the follow-up question I've gotten is, well, what if he does go? Would the Packers bring in, Matt LaFleur's brother? Who could they possibly bring in as offensive coordinator? I would be shocked in that scenario if Luke Getsy did not get the call based off of his input in the offense already. I think he'd make a logical choice to move to offensive coordinator and then potentially bring in a new quarterbacks coach, or you could just kind of split the duties. But I would expect they'd bring in a new quarterbacks coach if that were the case. So that would be my expectation. I think that would be the smart way to go if Nathaniel Hackett did get hired somewhere else. But hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully for Nathaniel, he gets the opportunity. That'd be amazing. But hopefully for the Packers, he stays in that offensive coordinator role because he's been phenomenal in that role for Green Bay. All right, some quick predictions for Sunday's game. I'm going Ravens over Titans. I think the Ravens, just the way that they've been playing football lately, the Titans have been just a bit off. I think we saw that in the Packers-Titans game. I think their defense is a little bit leaky. They've got no pass rush. They don't have the ability, in my opinion, to really harass Lamar Jackson like they would need to win this game. So I think Ravens win that. I think they win that by double digits. I don't think that stays really close. I think Saints beat the Bears, as I mentioned earlier. Although, again, I do think there's some capacity for the Bears to keep it a little bit closer, but ultimately 8 to 9 point win for the Saints. And then Steelers-Browns, man, my heart says Browns. I want to cheer the Browns. I'm a big Baker Mayfield guy. Love Baker. Really excited to see. I mean, they're kind of a lovable team right now, not having been in the playoffs for so damn long. Now they're going through the COVID stuff. Their coach is out. Their guard is out. Like, how do you not cheer for the Browns in this game? So, we'll see what happens. I think the Steelers are going to win. I think they win that fairly easy, but I think the Steelers win kind of similar, 8-9 points in that game. But again, my heart wants to say the Browns, but my head says the Steelers. So Ravens, Saints, Steelers on Sunday, like tomorrow, Sunday, whatever. I hope you guys enjoy the games. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Pack a Day podcast. I'll be back here tomorrow, probably starting to break down next week's matchup as we know who the Packers play, when they play, maybe some of those injury updates, etc. So going to be a really exciting week as the Packers get, around to their divisional round matchup. So make sure you are subscribing if you haven't already. Again, I'm doing this 365 days a year, nonstop, no matter what. So make sure you're checking it out daily if you're not already. Make sure to check out Nick and Gage today on the Pack a Day podcast, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Again, I'll be back tomorrow. And until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.